Mahjong.
Hola.
Guten Tag.
Sugoi.
Bonjour.
Jumbo.
Hello and welcome to you too. There was a time when many people in Wisconsin spoke different languages. Today, most of us speak English, but some of us can communicate in other languages as well. How did all these languages find their way to Wisconsin? People in Wisconsin are a wonderful mix of different nationalities, beliefs, physical features, customs, and skills from all around the world. Today, we're going to explore where we came from and what brought us all to our home. Wisconsin is known as the gathering of the waters, but we could also be called the gathering of the peoples. Throughout history, streams of people have flowed to Wisconsin from different parts of North America and other continents. Few other states have attracted people from so many different cultures. Over the past 300 or 400 years, people from a great number of different places have come to our state. Many of them stayed to create the Wisconsin we know today. These travelers may have included some of the first people to live in Wisconsin, the Chippewa and the Menominee. They included French fur traders, African-American farmers, miners and farmers from the British Isles and Europe, and other Native Americans such as the Stockbridge Munsee and Potawatomi. They include more recent immigrants from Asia and Latin America. And of course, many people have moved to Wisconsin from other states too. How about you? Your family may have lived here since long before you were born, or you may have recently moved to Wisconsin. Everyone's family story is different.
I was born in Virginia, but I've lived in Wisconsin for 7 years.
My grandparents were born in Czechoslovakia. My mother was born in Pennsylvania, but I was born in Wisconsin.
My parents were born in Laos, and I was born in Thailand.
My grandparents were born in Wisconsin, my mother was born in Wisconsin, and I was born in Wisconsin.
Many people believe the first stream of people came from Asia thousands of years ago, during the time the glaciers were in North America. Hunters following game crossed a land bridge that once existed between Siberia and what is now Alaska. They gradually settled in different parts of the Western Hemisphere, including what is now Wisconsin. American Indians lived in this area for several thousand years before anyone else arrived. The first known people to live in Wisconsin included the Menominee, Fox, Winnebago, Potawatomi, Chippewa, and others. Each tribe of Native Americans was a separate nation with its own territory and language and customs. For example, the Chippewa lived in the northern part of our state. The Menominee and later the Oneida lived in northeastern Wisconsin, and the Winnebago lived in the central part of our state. Today there are as many Indian people in Wisconsin as there ever were, but their way of life has changed. They live in all parts of the state, some on what is left of their original lands, others in small and large towns throughout Wisconsin.
My mom and I live on the Oneida Reservation in northeast Wisconsin, and my dad lives in California.
About 400 years ago, a stream began, which would eventually become the largest river of people ever to our state. But at first, it was just a trickle. The source was Europe. Settlers and explorers from France, Spain, and England had found new places to live in North America, and towns began to grow along the Atlantic coast, the St. Lawrence River, and the Gulf of Mexico. When explorers continued to push inland, they followed the waterways and found, among other things, Wisconsin. First in the 1600s came French fur traders and missionaries who lived and worked with Indian tribes. When the fur trade declined, the French abandoned their forts, and most of the traders moved on. Some stayed behind and helped settle the oldest existing cities in Wisconsin at Green Bay and Prairie du Chien.
My ancestors came to Wisconsin from France a long time ago.
After the 13 colonies became the United States, English-speaking pioneers looked to the west for new land to settle. The Erie Canal was built, connecting the eastern states with the Great Lakes, and the new Americans, called Yankees, began to move. But where would the Yankees and the European settlers make their homes if the Native Americans were already living here? The United States federal government in Washington forced the Wisconsin Indian tribes to give up their land and soon moved the Indian people to reservations in Wisconsin and elsewhere. Their land was now available for new settlers to occupy and use in other ways. The stream became a river as people from Europe began pouring in. When the people near the Atlantic coast heard about the available land and the jobs they could get here too, thousands of new Yankee settlers moved west to the frontier in Wisconsin. They worked on mines and built farms in southern Wisconsin and settled in the new towns and cities growing along the lakeshore and waterways. Many of the first Yankee and European settlers built homesteads like this one. These settlers found that Wisconsin soil was good for growing crops and that the forests were full of game. So they wrote their family and friends and they encouraged them to come to Wisconsin too. These letters talked about Wisconsin's good soil, cheap land, and job opportunities. In Europe, many people had a hard life because of wars and a lack of jobs. There was often no land available for those who wanted to become farmers. Some people wanted to escape bad governments, and some wanted the freedom to choose their own religion. When they heard about opportunities in America, they left their homes, their friends, and even their families behind. From England, Norway, Switzerland, Germany, Ireland, Poland, Belgium, Italy, Denmark, Czechoslovakia, and other lands they came looking for a better life. Many came to Wisconsin. Some settled in the countryside and became farmers and loggers. Some had the same jobs they'd had in Europe, as storekeepers or artisans. Others found new and different jobs building railroads and in Wisconsin mines and factories. The very first Yankee and European pioneers usually lived and worked together on the frontier. Later, many of the immigrants chose to settle among people from their own homeland, who spoke the same language and shared the same customs. Germans settled throughout most of Wisconsin. There were Swiss and Norwegians near Madison, Irish in the farmlands around Milwaukee and in many other parts of the state, Poles west of Green Bay, and Belgians and Czechoslovakians near Lake Michigan. In time, people living in these ethnic neighborhoods or communities learned to speak English, made new friends, got new jobs. Some moved away to get married or find work. People of different cultures and backgrounds began to blend together in families and communities.
Around the turn of the century, my great-grandmother came to Wisconsin from Germany. When she arrived, she spoke only German.
While Europeans and Yankees were finding their ways to Wisconsin, many African people were brought to the New World, mainly to the southern United States, and forced to work as slaves. Some escaped, and some were given freedom by their owners. They too began to settle here to work on farms and in factories, and as domestics, helping in other people's homes. After the Civil War, the African Americans were free. Soon many more moved to Wisconsin, some to farms in the countryside, the majority to cities like Milwaukee, Madison, Racine, Kenosha, and Beloit.
My grandparents moved to Chicago from Tennessee. In the 1980s, my parents moved to Wisconsin.
In more recent times, many Hispanic settlers have come to Wisconsin. At certain times of the year, farmers throughout the United States needed extra help with the crops. Many farm workers came from the southern United States and Mexico and other countries south of us. These workers moved from state to state, helping farmers plant and harvest crops. Some of these families decided to stay in Wisconsin to live and work all year round. Other families from Mexico, Central America, and South America have come to live and work here as doctors or teachers and in many other professions.
My parents moved from Mexico to the United States 17 years ago, and I've lived in Wisconsin almost a year.
Some of our most recent immigrants are families who traveled the farthest to get here. They've come across the Pacific Ocean from Asia, China, Korea, Vietnam, Laos, Thailand, India, Pakistan, the Philippines. Like so many of the settlers before them, they too are looking for freedom and the chance for a better way of life. Also, like many of the settlers before them, new immigrants sometimes find it easiest to settle near friends and neighbors who speak the same language. For example, More than 30,000 Hmong people have come to Wisconsin from Laos, and most of them live in communities in Wausau, Madison, and other towns. Work opportunities in America are very different from what they knew in Laos and Thailand. Those refugees who arrived first and have learned to speak English help newcomers adjust to their new lives in Wisconsin. Although this part of the world has about half of all the people on Earth, only a small number of immigrants have come to Wisconsin from Asia compared to other continents. Still, they are adding their traditions and languages to many of our towns and cities.
Because of the war, my parents came here from Laos. I was born in Chicago. Today we live in Wisconsin.
No wonder we have so many interesting people in Wisconsin. We all have different backgrounds and experiences. My grandparents came to Wisconsin in the early 1900s. They came from a small country called Armenia in the southeastern portion of Europe. How about yours?
I'm part Native American and part European. Both of my parents are German.
I'm adopted. My mom is German. My dad is many things.
My mom and dad are Oneida, Menominee, and Stockbridge Indians.
My mother is Blue Hmong. My father is White Hmong.
My great-grandmother is part French and Cherokee Indian. My great-grandfather is African American and lived in the southern states.
We may not know where our ancestors came from, or our family trees may have names from all parts of the world. No matter who our ancestors are or where they came from, we in Wisconsin are really different from our ancestors because we are all Americans, no matter where our families came from. Asia, Europe, Africa, South America, and Asia again. The peoples of the world have streamed into Wisconsin. Most arrived in just a little over 100 years. They've made our state what it is, rich with wonderful, fascinating people. All of us so different from each other, but all of us Americans. See you next time.
Au revoir.
Kwaheri.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Nagiwa.
Muhatoa.
Adios.